Taking your motor out to Mega City. Here's your look at the Hiya Toys Judge Dredd, Dredd and Lawmaster Mark II. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18th scale, featuring super articulation action figures from Hiya Toys. Prior to patrolling, the folks over at Hiya Toys were kind enough to send over the Judge Dredd and Lawmaster Mark II that we can have a look in this review, so thank you for them for that. Then I'm going to also grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. Now, this is the same Judge Dredd as we did get before, but this time around he comes included with his bike. Judge Dredd stands 4 inches in height, or the figure's going to be 10 centimeters tall. Then on to the Lawmaster Mark II. I'm going to spin this to the side, and what I'll do is I'll measure from the back at the bumper to the front at the gun turret. Who drives around a bike with gun turrets? Judge Dredd drives around with bikes with gun turrets. That being said, though, let's grab the tape measure, and from the back of the bumper, as promised, to the front of the turrets, you're looking at the bike being 6 inches in length, or it's going to be 16 centimeters long. And as for comparisons, I'm going to bring in the original Judge Dredd we did get from Hiya Toys. Same figure, same mold, slightly different paint. In fact, I feel like the darker colors here represented for the Judge Dredd that comes included with the Lawmaster Mark II looks a little nicer, I think, with the mold that they've already sculpted in the first place. Another comparison we can also make as well is to bring in Judge Anderson. And not only was it a reason to bring it in just simply because Judge Anderson is another judge, but also because, like Judge Dredd that came included with the Lawmaster Mark II, Judge Anderson will also come included with her bike as well, something we will be looking at in an upcoming review. I'm not going to detain Dredd anymore, though. Let's have a look at the figure's accessories. All of these accessories, by the way, seem to be the same ones that we did get from before. First, the figure comes included with his baton. And to bring back in the original baton, the same mold once again, but you can see like the colors are a little bit darker this time around. The handlebar, or the handle of the baton can be held in his hand. Simply just take the figure as he is right now. You don't even really need to change the hands out either, even though he does come with included with an extra 2. You easily can take the baton and fit it into his hand. Another accessory that Judge Dredd also comes included with is his trusty Lawgiver. The Lawgiver, for as size that it is, I mean, just the attention to detail. I know maybe not everyone's cup of tea, these 3 3/4 inch scale figures from Hiya Toys, but if you are into that scale, Hiya Toys is knocking it out of the park. The detail-wise, from a gun this small, it is the same one that we did get from the other Judge Dredd. The only thing, again, different is that the original Judge Dredd Lawgiver seems a little bit, again, shinier of a silver. It's a little bit more muted this time around. Lawgiver can be, again, held in his hand. I mean, he already has right now gripping hands, so you don't even need to change the hands out if you didn't want to. But if you did, the figure also comes included with 2 extra hands. One hand is very specifically dedicated, there we go, getting that all out, for holding the Lawgiver, because of course it does have a trigger firing finger. Just take the Lawgiver and fit into his hands. So much smaller. Of course, it's harder to do this when you've got such a small hand, but you can see like the trigger fits almost okay over top of the trigger, where again the trigger would normally have been. Or the figure also comes included with another gripping hand. Now, honestly though, this hand, if you were to say look at the hand he comes already included with, it really isn't that much different that I feel like they didn't even need to pack the hands in the first place. Well, maybe the hand that has the triggering firing finger, I don't know if I would necessarily have included this hand. I feel it's almost even not necessary. For right now, at least, I'll take the baton out of his hand. The other thing I did also want to show you guys is that you can take the Lawgiver like before, taking it first of all out of his hand. He has a holster there on the side of his leg. You just take the Lawgiver and you holster it down. Well, make sure, of course, I've got it facing the right way. Sliding it down with the handle on the back side there. So, of course, the clip here on the front then slides into the provided groove that they've got on the front of the holster, and he can be displayed that way. Doesn't get in also the way of him sitting on top of the bike, but I think maybe what I might just end up doing is removing the Lawgiver for right now and putting it to the side, getting a closer look at Judge Dredd. I did already say that this is pretty much the same mold as before, and it is. The only thing that is notable to say is the fact that the colors seem darker now in the newer Dredd. Head sculpt-wise is exactly the same, and I have no faults at all with the way they've sculpted the head. The colors, though, are much darker, and I think that's the thing I like about this Dredd over the original one. The original head sculpt for Dredd was fine, and in fact it was perfect, but I feel like the skin tone is maybe a little too light. The darker coloring, by just adding a little bit of pink to the complexion, boy does that make this head sculpt pop a lot more. Body-wise are exactly the same. The torso and the shoulder pads, of course, the large shoulder pads that the judges all sport are, again, exactly the same. This one is a little bit more golden finish. If you prefer the more shinier armors, for example, this one does it a little bit better than this one. I suppose if you liked it, you could also really take the heads because, of course, they're only on ball joints after all. Say if you like this head a little bit more, just pop that off and replace it obviously to this body. If you, again, you like the more softer colors of the green. Like the greens, I think, are maybe a little nicer on the original release. There's a little bit more of a softer green, a lighter green that's added to an otherwise dark green plastic. The greens, though, on the newer release seem a little more shinier, as you could probably easily see. Details on this figure outside of just, again, a stellar-looking head sculpt. Now, I think they're also planning to release a larger scale Judge Dredd. This is something that the Hiya Toys is certainly branching off to now experiment with. Normally, they're so known for doing like 3 3/4 inch scale, but since then, Hiya Toys has announced that they're doing larger scale figures, one of which being the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface in a 6-inch scale. Really looking forward to that one. But back to Dredd, though, again, like he's got these large shoulder pads. One looks like almost Donkey Kong's barrel. The other one, of course, has the notable eagle with wings. Very large, very, very cumbersome shoulders. It really does cause problems when it comes to the figure being able to really move his arms. With his arms, you only can really move them so far. This one actually gives you a little bit more restrictions than this one here, but at least he does have the means to bring his arms up. Something also that he's a little bit limited by, just by the designing of his suit, is the very, very little amount of hinging that he has on his elbows. That's as far really as you can get the elbows to bend. For the articulation, by the way, on the figure, I guess we might as well just talk about that now. He has a ball joint. Now, again, like the ball joint is here at the base of the neck. It's not in the head. The head and the neck is all one piece, giving him a nice size. Look at the size of the neck on this guy. But head looks down. If you want a brooding Dredd, Dredd never broods. Or you can have the head looking up, or you can have it rocking back and forth, or you can even rotate it all the way around. Shoulders, as we've already discussed, are going to be a little bit more limited. You can bring them out at about 90 degrees, just a little less than that. You can bring the arms forward and back, but the whole time you're doing it, maybe not as much this one. Definitely on this side, though, there's definitely restrictions getting in the way of things. He does have, of course, the elbow bend there. Very limited in the way of articulation there. Forearms also rotate, and the hands also rotate all the way around. I'm doing it very carefully just because, again, like the pegs are so small on this. Just before, actually, we look at the articulation on the torso, just quickly to show you guys, he does have the very large Judge Dredd badge, chained nicely there, connecting from that to the top of his collar. And he has some additional detailing done down below here for his belt buckle with a whole stray of pockets all wrapping around the perimeter of his belt. Of course, he's got the larger knee pads there as well. Upper torso isn't a ball joint, so yeah, you can rotate it. That's still the same as the Dredd before. And he also has a ball joint at the base of the abdomen, so you can also move it that way as well. Yeah, again, like if you can really get into the 3 3/4 inch stuff that they're doing with Hiya Toys is really doing some really fun stuff, especially now that they're starting to branch out into vehicles as well. For the figure's legs, now again, you can move them forward, you can move them back, and you can also split them out. You may have already noticed the fact that the legs do drop. So if you wanted to, normally the legs would be kind of sitting more closer to the sockets of the thigh, or sockets to the waist. But if you wanted to get a little bit more mileage, you can actually drop the legs down a little bit more, and that will really actually help to bring the legs further forward. He has a single hinge only in the knee. It allows really no articulation there, but he has articulation at least at the top of the thigh. But he does have at least articulation in the ankle. Not only can you rock it back and forth this way, but you also can rock it back and forth this way too. Even though the figure doesn't come included with a display stand this time around, he still, though, manages to retain one peg hole on the undersides of his feet. So if you wanted to, I'm sure if you already have Judge Dredd, you're likely going to be displaying that Judge Dredd already on his display stand. If you're going to get this one, obviously, with the bike, then you will likely want to display him with the bike. So I'm not really disappointed the fact that the figure this time around doesn't come included with the display stand. I have enough display stands from Hiya Toys. On to now the Lawmaster Mark II. And boy, oh boy, this is a nice looking bike. There is actually some batteries that are installed on the bottom of the bike. The bike themselves, actually the bike doesn't need batteries right away. The folks over at Hiya Toys have already included AG13 or LR44 batteries. I think it actually takes 2, and they're housed inside the bottom of the bike. There's an on and off switch, and just prior to doing that, there wasn't actually a restriction plastic piece, so you will want to remove that. It was actually right there. I've already taken the liberty of popping that off. And then from there, there's just an on and off switch. I guess what we'll do is we'll switch it to on, but I'll show you how to turn on and off the headlight in a second. Quickly spinning around the bike, you can see like the attention to detail for something so small. It looks exactly like the way it did in the Judge Dredd comics. Not the movie, not the one with Sylvester Stallone, and not really even the one with Carl Urban, but like the original comic. This looks exactly like the bike. The attention to detail, it's got the big thrusters, the big exhaust pipes at the back. Of course, all this nice additional gunmetal gray making up the middle section of the bike. Not to mention these giant gun turrets. The gun turrets don't move though, so just be careful. Don't want to hinge them back and forth. They don't actually hinge. You're only going to be buckling the plastic. You got a few headlights there on the front, the big giant eagle crest there on the front as well, and the stars and stripes both represented on the crest on the front of the bike as well as on the back. It's a really, again, nice looking bike. Now, you may have already noticed also as well that there's no kickstand. How does the bike stand up on its own? Well, it probably helps as well that the bike has such large tire treads. With that alone, really, the bike has no problems standing upright. You don't even need a kickstand at all. Judge Dredd, of course, will sit on top of the bike. The front of the bike does have some posability, so you can rotate it back and forth. Now, here's again, like where you can turn on and off the headlight. Keeping in mind already that you're going to have to switch it back to on. You're just going to take the top and you're going to tap the headlight. It would be helpful, of course, if I actually hit it the first time. But touch it only once. Touch it again to turn it off. That illuminates not only the front headlight, but also the readout display, even though there really isn't a readout display, but it shows you at least that it illuminates on the inside of the bike as well. That's a nice little touch. I like the fact that literally that's a nice little touch. I'm glad to see that they found a way to include that. And it was also smart that they still included that despite having an on and off switch, because it saves you then having to go, if, like, say, for example, this is sitting on your shelf, it saves you having to then pick up the bike, lift it upside down, turn it on, and, well, turn it on if you wanted to turn it on, and then just leave it like this. And then when you're done, pick the bike back up, turn it off. This time around, all you really have to do this time is just tap it. That's all you have to do. Really smart on Hiya's part to include that. Okay, so if you wanted to get Judge Dredd, obviously this is probably one of the reasons why you wanted to watch this review. I'd like to think it's also because of my charm. But if you wanted to get, say, Judge Dredd on top of the Lawmaster, you're just going to kind of pretty much like bend his arms. You already know how someone sits on top of a bike, kind of get him in that seated position. And then from there, you're going to straddle him on top of the bike. Now, I find it's easy first to take the figure and attach him onto the handlebars. You can always worry about it where his behind is sitting. You always worry about where his legs are situated afterwards. But get those hands sort of on the handlebars first. Once they're there, then from there, you can kind of swing around Judge Dredd, and you can kind of get his legs on top of like the kickstands right there, or little pedals there on the top of the bike. And he sits okay. I mean, he doesn't quite clear touching the seat completely, if of course you've got all the other things checked off. Like if you've got him actually on the side stands, then he really isn't gonna, he's kind of gonna hover a little bit on the bike. But man, oh man, does that ever look fantastic. And of course the finishing touches would only be then just to press the button on the front of the headlight, and Judge Dredd is start ready to patrol the streets of Mega City. The thing about it though is, if you already have, for example, this Judge Dredd, just to bring him back in right now, I still feel there's enough incentive to have the figure displayed, or to pick up this figure again, now that he actually comes included with his Lawmaster Mark II. Honestly, I think if it had been, say, the other way around, and Judge Dredd was, say, released with the Lawmaster first, I don't know if I would be as interested necessarily to go and pick up Judge Dredd again. I love the figure, don't get me wrong, but I think if it was the other way around, crisscross, I probably would have just decided rather instead to get Judge Dredd with the Lawmaster and not pick up Judge Dredd on his own. It actually worked out this way that Hiya Toys decided to release this as a second set after the fact of already releasing Judge Dredd, but still now having both the figures of the exact same figure on the shelf doesn't bother me in the slightest. I will probably have this Judge Dredd, the one that's standing on his own right now, probably displayed maybe with the Lawgiver in his hand, or maybe even his baton. And this Judge Dredd, man, oh man, it's going to look nice being displayed on my shelf, actually riding the top of his bike, the Lawmaster Mark II. I mean, come on. I already liked Judge Dredd before. The 3 3/4 inch exquisite mini that we did get from Hiya Toys in the past was a fine-looking figure, especially if you like the way that Judge Dredd looked like from the original comic run. Now, if you get Judge Dredd, though, packed along with his Lawmaster Mark II, now we're talking. This figure already takes the existing figure that was already good in the first place, but now mounts him on top of a very cool-looking bike that has as well the bonus feature of a light-up headlight. Something that, honestly, I don't even think Hiya Toys needed to include. I was just fine and content the idea that Judge Dredd was finally going to be getting his bike to be riding around in. but by also including a headlight, which is fully accessible. I mean, that's one of the things I really like also about it, is that they've put it in a place where at least if you're having it on display, you don't have to be picking the bike up every single time. The only downside of whenever you get vehicles, or even just figures for that matter, that have something that has to be lit up on them, I always like figures or vehicles that have something that you can access right away. It's easy to press. You can press either the front of the chest or turn a switch on the side of it. The moment I have to then take anything off the shelf, hit a switch that's underneath it just to turn it on and off. I think this is a much easier method to go about. Now, I don't have the figure displayed right now with the lawgiver holstered on the side of his leg, or if you really wanted to, Judge Dredd, I could easily see him still shooting at bad guys while still driving, on the other handlebar at least, the Lawmaster Mark II. What do you guys think of this? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you had the chance already to pick up Judge Dredd and Lawmaster Mark II? If you have, let me know what you think of it down below. If you haven't yet, is this something you could see yourselves picking up? Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did take the time and provide the sample of the Judge Dredd and Lawmaster Mark II sets. Definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of Judge Dredd. If you guys enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly do want to stick around for more, I did already say at the beginning of this review that we will be looking at in an upcoming video the Judge Anderson and Lawmaster Mark II set, which I think is pretty much the exact same bike. But if you ask me, if we can get just the various judges driving around, imagine just a big diorama of having all the judges driving around on their Lawmaster Mark IIs. Sign me up. Yes, please. But yeah, we will be looking at Judge Anderson with the Lawmaster Mark II in an upcoming video. Of course, making sure you're not missing out on anything by hitting that subscribe button down below and, yeah, turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.